The movie opens with a man narrowly escaping being shot after being caught cheating with another man's wife. Clutching his clothes, he fumbles to start his car. His young son, Ace, watches and laughs as if mocking him for not heeding a prior warning. Years later, Ace is all grown up. His lifestyle revolves around spending nights with different women, and they don't seem to mind indulging him. This time he hooks up with Lethabo. He can't remember her name, or even whose place they're in until Lethabo, clearly unimpressed, sets him straight. Annoyed, he almost asks her to leave, but she reminds him it's her apartment. Embarrassed, Ace hurriedly jumps into his rickety Volkswagen and drives off. Ace is a professional lobola negotiator, and his current job is to convince Nando's family to approve her marriage to Mumso. At the meeting, Ace paints Mumso as a kind, church-going man who wouldn't mind Nando's 2 kids. He insists Mumso's Christian values will help Nando improve, and even claims her past would deter most suitors. Ace will say anything to present his clients in the best light. His skill at spinning convincing tales has earned him an impeccable track record. Every negotiation goes exactly as he plans. As he prepares to leave, Nando can't help but send him lingering, suggestive glances. Concealing his identity is essential to his work. Ace often alters his appearance and style for every new negotiation. His sharp oratory skills and talent for weaving lies have made him almost irresistible in the negotiation game. Meanwhile, Duke, a tech entrepreneur and the owner of the struggling mate date app, vents to his friend and business partner, SoonThe, about the company's declining fortunes. Frustrated, Duke admits he can't figure out a solution. Rachel, his PA, interrupts, only to learn that Duke has decided to marry Zandili, a woman both she and SoonThe find overbearing. Their conversation derails as Rachel and SoonThe begin planning Duke's engagement party, forcing Duke to steer them back on track. Duke is also preoccupied with an important concern. He has no one in his family capable of handling his lobola negotiation. He knows Zandil's father will be tough, and he only has one chance to make it work. Sensing his friend's worry, SoonThe steps in with a solution. He knows the perfect person for the job: Ace. The lounge is Ace's ideal spot to unwind and maybe meet new women. Unlike his best friend, who has a family waiting for him at home, Ace has no such commitments. From across the room, Zandile catches his eye. Spotting an opportunity to strike up a conversation, Ace doesn't let it slip by. A bartender's mistake leaves him covering Zandile's tab, but Ace considers it a small price to pay for the chance to get her number. However, Zandile leaves without sharing her contact details. At the park, Duke bumps into Ace after attempting to lie his way to a free snack from a vendor. Rachel had set up the meeting, but Duke's goofy behavior immediately irritates Ace, even before they start talking business. Duke doesn't want his family involved in the negotiations, but Ace insists it's non-negotiable. However, when Duke offers 200,000 rands to cover both Ace's fee and the lobola payment, Ace has no reason to decline. He's officially on board. To meet with Ace, Duke cancels a lunch date with Zandile. But Zandile is meticulous and doesn't let it slide. She questions Duke about the cancellation, only to be met with his incoherent rambling about Ace. Frustrated by his vague responses, Zandile loses interest and decides to focus on her makeup instead. Ace takes his work seriously, going to great lengths to make the negotiations seamless. He assembles a group to pose as Duke's family for the event, including one of Duke's actual aunts and Ace's uncles. When Ace finds out Duke has mentioned his real name to Zandile, he's furious, but the money keeps him motivated. Meanwhile, SoonThe and Rachel remain divided on whether Ace's involvement is the right move. Later, Zandile is waiting for her date in a high-end restaurant when Ace unexpectedly shows up. He's confident their meeting isn't a coincidence, even as Zandile brushes off his attempts to charm her. Zandile asks Ace to leave, but he stubbornly persists. Zandile's date arrives. It's Duke. The meeting seems like a round table between Ace, Duke, and Zandile. Zandile doesn't let her guard down and insists she has never met Ace. The table becomes a war zone when Duke steps away. Zandile gets upset and throws her glass of champagne at Ace. Duke returns, surprised at how sour things have become. Despite Duke's attempts to smooth things over, Ace decides to leave. Zandile continues to assert control over Duke, even going so far as to order his meal for him. During lunch with Mandy, Zandile complains about Ace's involvement. Mandy is known for speaking her mind. She tells Zandile she might be overreacting, possibly because of Ace's boldness. Mandy also mentions that Ace's face looks familiar but can't recall where. Ace prepares for the next step, getting to know Mr. Zungu, Zandile's father. Establishing a connection with him is key to the negotiations and understanding the family better. When they meet, Mr. Zungu nearly overwhelms Duke with his questions. Ace saves the day by stepping in and winning Mr. Zungu over with charm. Ace describes SoonThe in glowing terms, softening Mr. Zungu's attitude. By the end of the conversation, he agrees to meet again at the beach. Duke, eager to impress, boasts about his fishing skills, not realizing he'll need to prove them. On the day of the meeting, Duke's nerves are evident, leaving Ace to manage him. Just seeing the fishing pole makes Duke queasy, and he ends up vomiting before trying. SoonThe takes care of him and suggests he rest, but Duke insists on continuing. Meanwhile, Ace and Mr. Zungu build a rapport. Although Mr. Zungu recognizes Ace's charm as part of a strategy, he enjoys the interaction. One thing is clear: to Mr. Zungu, SoonThe is worth far more than money. Mr. Zungu steps away to get a drink for Ace, a gesture SoonThe knows means her father really likes him. As they wait, Ace and SoonThe share stories from their past. Ace's tale about waiting in the car while his father cheated makes SoonThe laugh. While fishing, Ace's hook catches a fish, and SoonThe helps him reclaim it. Their laughter fills the air as their bodies brush against each other. At one point, SoonThe unknowingly almost sits on Ace's lap. Even at the hospital while Duke recovers, Ace and SoonThe continue their conversations. SoonThe hints at why she avoids certain things, even if they're what she wants. Ace takes this as an indirect explanation for why she's keeping her distance from him. The tension between them grows. Duke's recovery from motion sickness takes a turn for the worse, with an allergic reaction to his medication. With temporary paralysis, peeing on himself becomes the least of his problems. He asks for chips, but SoonThe refuses. Once the nurse certifies his discharge, Duke is wheeled home. At Mr. Zungu's house, Duke shares a room with Ace. Duke's condition leads him to express brotherly affection for Ace, which Ace doesn't mind until Duke casually mentions Rachel as someone he's proud to have in his corner. This piques Ace's curiosity, but Duke avoids further discussion and falls asleep, snoring heavily. The next morning, Ace and Duke join the Zungus for breakfast. They bond over jokes. When Duke and SoonThe excuse themselves, Mr. Zungu praises Ace and Duke for their proper upbringing. Mr. Zungu decides to grant Duke's request, allowing the Lobola negotiations to begin in earnest. Later, Duke mentions he needs to leave in a few hours to attend to work, but Ace brings up his interest in Rachel. Duke insists Ace stay away from her, not wanting his company's top asset involved with a playboy. When Duke returns to Themba and Rachel, his demeanor lacks the excitement of a man preparing for marriage. It's as if his heart lies elsewhere. SoonThe attends a party, but unfortunately, the love of her life isn't available. Earlier, Duke had agreed to let Ace accompany SoonThe to the event. After all, what are brothers for? The party is wild and full of energy. Ace and SoonThe have one of the best nights of their lives, laughing and tumbling into each other all night long. The tipsy duo eventually find themselves outside the club, their hunger getting the better of them, and decide to grab a meal. What better way to continue their adventurous night than breaking into the club's kitchen? They prepare an actual meal together while Ace reassures SoonThe that she's making a great choice in Duke. The night seems almost perfect as their lips draw closer. But before the kiss can happen, the club manager barges in. Ace quickly lies his way through the situation, and they are escorted out. Meanwhile, Duke, who's spending the night with Rachel and preparing for his pitch the next day, calls SoonThe. His check-in makes Rachel feel a little sad, and Ace, too, feels a wave of sadness. The four of them each have mixed feelings about the situation, but no one admits it. As the Lobola negotiations approach, Ace works with his team. However, Biza, Miriam, and Long John stress him out with their constant deviation from their roles. Ace can only hope they don't ruin the negotiations. Just moments before the negotiations start, Biza is already going off script. Miriam, taking Ace's constant references to her being a tough cop seriously, brings handcuffs. Long John seems completely lost. Ace can only pray for divine intervention. Meanwhile, Ace and SoonThe can't keep their hands off each other. The negotiations begin, and Uncle Brian starts grilling Ace and his team. Ace's prayers go unanswered, and it's Long John who first messes up. Wearing earbuds, he screams in excitement as the team he bet on wins. Miriam intermittently chimes in with her thoughts, while Mr. Zungu grows increasingly irritated by their antics. Ace excuses himself to have a word with Duke and crosses paths with Mandy. Mandy is trying hard to remember when she met Ace before. She nails it. Ace had previously negotiated for her brother-in-law's family. Without his costume, Mandy is certain it's Ace, the renowned Lobola negotiator. SoonThe, knowing that it's easier to get the truth from Duke, presses him. With the slightest bit of pressure, Duke spills the beans. SoonThe is left stunned, struggling to understand why Duke paid Ace such a large sum. Zandale then mentions their time in the club's kitchen and insinuates that Ace kissed her. This sets Duke off, and he punches Ace. What starts as a confrontation quickly turns into a physical fight, only stopping when Long John and Biza rush out of the house. Everything turns sour. The entire Zungu family chases after Duke and his group of imposters. They barely manage to escape. 3 months later, Ace is still reeling from the disaster. His neglect of self-care and the mess in his house reflect his state of mind. Despite his efforts, trying to reconcile with Duke and Zandale only leads to failure. It takes the words of his best friend to push him into action, motivating him to approach things differently. Ace confronts his dad, throwing a punch in frustration. His father hasn't been a good role model, leaving Ace's understanding of love twisted. But in just a few minutes, his dad helps him see things more clearly, encouraging him to do the right thing. Back home, Ace finds Duke, and the two finally sort things out amicably. Duke reveals that he and Zandale never truly loved each other. His new fiancée, Rachel, is now a part of his life, and he wants Ace to be involved in his plans, this time as a friend, not a negotiator. Ace's next stop is the Zungu residence. Mr. Zungu scolds him, but his affection for Ace outweighs his anger. He reluctantly shares Zandale's location, and Ace rushes off. Zandale's plane is nearly ready for takeoff when Ace arrives. He doesn't hide his feelings, apologizing and making her feel truly special. Zandale, too, feels the same way, and soon, they're kissing and making up. Weeks later, Duke and Rachel tie the knot, with Ace and Zandale attending as a couple. They make no effort to hide their affection for each other, seizing every opportunity to kiss and show how much they love one another.